Hey everyone, welcome to Mythology Explained. Ever since rumours started circulating that Elliott Page may be playing Achilles in Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, the internet has been arguing about one question over and over again. What was Achilles actually supposed to look like? And unlike some of the recent discussions surrounding Helen of Troy, this one is a little more grounded in the actual source material. Because while Homer is surprisingly vague about Helen's precise appearance, he is far less vague about Achilles. In fact, Achilles is probably one of the most visually and symbolically defined characters in all of Greek mythology. Homer spends massive portions of the Iliad building up not just his strength, but his presence, his emotional intensity, and the almost supernatural effect he has on the people around him. Now, before we go any further, it's worth pointing out that this casting still hasn't actually been fully confirmed. Right now, a lot of this discussion is based on rumours, fan speculation, and online reports. And while Achilles is the name that's generated the most discussion online, there are also reports suggesting Page may be instead playing Elpenor, one of Odysseus' younger crew members from the Odyssey. But even though this conversation is still speculative, because Achilles is such an iconic and visually defined figure in Greek mythology, the rumour alone has already sparked a massive debate online about what Achilles was actually supposed to look like in the first place. Achilles isn't presented as an ordinary warrior. He isn't even really presented as an ordinary human being. He feels closer to a force of nature. Now the question is whether modern adaptations can still capture what Achilles represented to the ancient Greeks in the first place. Because Achilles wasn't just famous, he wasn't just strong, he was the ideal heroic warrior of the Greek world, the man against whom all other fighters were measured. And that image becomes incredibly important when you're adapting a story like the Odyssey or the Iliad for a modern audience, starting with Homer himself. One thing that's important to understand is that Homer doesn't write character descriptions the way a modern novelist would. He rarely pauses the story to explain exact facial structure, eye color, height, or clothing details for pages at a time. Instead, Homer builds characters through repeated epithets, imagery, emotional reactions, and the way other characters respond to them. Reputation matters more than technical description, and Achilles dominates the Iliad almost completely. In fact, the opening line of the entire poem tells us exactly what kind of figure we're dealing with. Sing, goddess, the rage of Peleus' son Achilles, murderous, doomed, that cost the Achaeans countless losses. That's how the Iliad begins, with the rage of Achilles. Homer frames Achilles almost like the central destructive force of the war itself. The emotional engine of the entire poem isn't who wins the war, it's what happens when the greatest warrior alive is consumed by wrath, grief, and vengeance. Throughout the Iliad, Homer constantly refers to Achilles with repeated phrases like swift-footed Achilles, godlike Achilles, or brilliant Achilles. They slowly construct a very deliberate image in the audience's mind. He's faster than everyone else, more radiant than everyone else, more powerful, more dangerous. Even his ancestry separates him from ordinary men. Because Achilles is the son of Thetis, a sea goddess, and Homer constantly reminds us of this divine connection. Achilles is mortal, technically, but he never fully feels human in the way characters like Odysseus or Menelaus do. There's always something slightly elevated about him, something unnatural. One of the clearest physical descriptions Homer gives us comes very early in the Iliad, during Achilles' confrontation with Agamemnon. Achilles is moments away from killing him before Athena intervenes. Athena came behind him and seized the son of Peleus by his golden hair, visible to him alone. That single line has probably influenced thousands of years of artistic depictions of Achilles more than almost anything else in the poem. There's also a broader cultural concept tied into this called kalos kagathos, the idea that nobility, physical beauty, strength, excellence, and heroic virtue were interconnected. Great men were expected to look great. Physical appearance reflected status, lineage, and excellence. And this idealization of the male form is reflected everywhere in ancient Greek culture, especially in sculpture. Greek statues are famously muscular, broad-shouldered, and physically imposing. Whether it's gods, heroes, athletes, or warriors, the Greeks consistently portrayed elite men as strong, disciplined, and physically exceptional. They represented the ideal male form as the Greeks themselves imagined it. Strength, symmetry, proportion, beauty, and physical capability were all deeply interconnected into the Greek worldview. A powerful body reflected discipline, nobility, competence, and excellence. Many Greek heroes are specifically described almost more like perfected physical ideals than ordinary human beings, and Achilles is a great example of that. Homer repeatedly frames him as overwhelming, not just emotionally or militarily, but physically. And this is exactly why the Elliott Page casting rumour makes no sense. When people picture Achilles, they imagine someone physically dominant, tall, athletic, powerful looking, almost intimidating in presence. And fairly or unfairly, Page projects almost the complete opposite image physically. 5'1", extremely lean, narrow shoulders, barely pushing 100 pounds body weight, and not even remotely close to the kind of idealized heroic physique traditionally associated with Achilles in Greek art, literature, or mythology. And when a culture spends centuries consistently idealizing heroic men in a very specific physical way, in literature, sculpture, athletics, and mythology simultaneously, audiences are naturally going to notice when a modern reinterpretation moves so very, very far away from that image. Modern audiences often imagine Achilles as simply a highly skilled warrior, but Homer's version of Achilles is much more extreme than that, especially after the death of Patroclus, after which Achilles essentially abandons moderation entirely. The poem repeatedly emphasizes that even the gods themselves become uneasy watching what Achilles is turning into. And at one point, when Achilles returns to battle, Homer describes him like this: Athena crowned his head with a golden cloud, and from it she kindled a blaze of shimmering fire. As when smoke rises into the sky from a city burning far away, so from Achilles' head the blaze shot upward. And the Trojans react accordingly. Homer describes entire armies panicking at the mere sight of Achilles returning to battle. Hector himself, the greatest Trojan warrior alive, eventually breaks and runs from him in fear around the walls of Troy. Homer spends huge portions of the Iliad establishing Hector as noble, brave, disciplined, and extraordinarily capable, and yet Achilles still feels overwhelming by comparison. For nearly 3,000 years, Achilles represented the ultimate warrior archetype, but interesting later adaptations have often toned him down rather than up. Take Troy from 2004, for example. Brad Pitt's Achilles is still visually very close to the traditional image people associate with the character: athletic, long blonde hair, physically dominant, charismatic, but the film strips away most of the overtly supernatural elements. The gods are removed almost entirely. Achilles becomes more psychologically grounded and historically realistic. And while Pitt's version became enormously influential for modern audiences, it's worth remembering that Homer's Achilles isn't really realistic at all. He is mythological in the purest sense of the word. He is beautiful but monstrous, capable of love but also extraordinary cruelty. And I think that complexity is why Achilles has endured for nearly 3 millennia. Now, back to Nolan for a second. What makes some of these casting rumors particularly confusing is that Nolan doesn't appear to be making a heavily stylized fantasy adaptation where historical or cultural authenticity is completely irrelevant. In fact, based on the trailer, the film seems to be trying very hard to evoke a believable ancient Greek world. The armor looks practical and weighty, the ships feel physical, and the environments seem grounded in a recognizable Bronze Age Mediterranean aesthetic rather than generic fantasy. But in my opinion, that just makes a lot of the casting choices feel even more disconnected and difficult to ignore, especially Achilles. Because unlike Helen, whose casting I don't agree with, but whose appearance Homer leaves surprisingly open-ended, Achilles actually has a fairly consistent mythological image attached to him across centuries of literature and art. Not just a great soldier, but the embodiment of heroic warfare itself. And once Achilles stops feeling larger than life, he stops feeling like Achilles. Anyway, that's it for today's video. What do you think? Are there any other elements of the Odyssey you want me to break down? Let me know in the comment section down below. See you in the next one.